Hi, everyone, and welcome back to that UFO podcast. My name is Andy, and I am joined today by the Rackford and Carlota A. Harris Professor in the Department of Pathology at Stanford University School of Medicine, a renowned immunologist and co-founder of the Sol Foundation. Again, my pleasure to welcome back Professor Garry Nolan to the podcast. Gary, welcome.
Thanks so much, and hello, everybody.
Yes, really popular guest, Gary. I think this is maybe your third appearance on the podcast now. So let's get to it. A lot to get through and a lot to talk about, especially the Sol Symposium that just happened. But before we get to that, trying to keep up to date with the UFO topic these last couple of weeks has been a bit of a bumpy ride. And I wonder, how have you found it as someone directly involved or indirectly involved in some of these stories coming out?
Well, I think it's exciting at one level, dealing with and explaining to people what each of the claimed revelations mean in a broader sense, and trying to separate assumptions and conclusions from the underlying data is where probably I've spent most of my time. I think the value of the community analyzing the results, or the things I should say that have been shown, or delving into the background of the individual that was the focus of the News Nation, is both good and bad. I mean, I think it probably, if it were me, I would feel a little exposed, some of the things that I've seen people go into. But as far as I can tell, nobody's been able to come up with anything negative about his, claimed history of work, etc. So that's, or that, when I still mean negative, that he has not misrepresented himself. And so that is all positive. Analyzing the video, I've seen some interesting video analyses, again, that don't say one way or the other what it is that claimed picture was all about, what the video was all about. So, I don't know yet, because I've seen people who are excited about the revelations and those that think it was too much all at once. And so that in many ways mirrors my internal plan and agenda of how I've wanted to talk about this for a long time. I've wanted to talk about the nuts and bolts and the medical data, because those are things that are tangible and can be, talked about with another scientist if the data, is available for it, as opposed to things that are experiential and can't necessarily be fully validated except by the person who it happened to. And many people in the community have, let's say, with me as the focus, felt like it was Garry doesn't want to talk about the woo, or Garry's against it, or Sol is against it, which is ridiculous on the face of it. No, it's just, you have to lay things out to the uninitiated in a much more programmatic way than those who've lived in it for the last 10, 20 or more years, in the case of some experiencers. So, on the one hand, I would have preferred a more measured release of information. But on the other, for people who, such as this guy, Jake, he's like, look, I've been holding this in for the last however many years. I'm ready to get it out, and I don't care. And it's I don't know who first came up and coined the term. It is the catastrophic disclosure that people said that they don't, that the government claims that they don't want. And so, we'll see. I mean, I'm still a little tentative about what the current state really means for the field as a whole. But that said, I have not seen any strong or tangible negatives. My point has only been just be careful. Don't allow other people's interpretations of what it is that people are saying. Go back to the source. Go back to the data.
Yeah, that's very fair. Let's talk about this briefly now, then we'll get to Saul. We'll switch it round since we've got into a little bit of detail now. You mentioned that there's been an online reaction, which I think no matter what comes out in the UFO topic, it's always divisive either way. It doesn't really matter what drops or the quality of the data. Do you think if the interview had come out without the video attached, there would have been a more positive reaction to the content of what Jake was saying?
Perhaps. I think, look, we're visual animals, and we're attracted to things that move, and so a video engages more of the mind than does just words on a page or words listened to. So actually, I think it was more the mention of the psionic aspect, or as much that, as his personal and emotional reaction to it, which I think what you see, at least to me, is a person who is willing to wear everything he has to say on his sleeve. He's not going to hold anything back. And what I like about that is that I can then read all of the body language of the individual, and assign it to the values that he's evincing. And so for me, I do that all the time, and that's just I'd like to think that I'm a good read of character and body language, and see if the two things align. And in all of my interactions with him, my red flags have never gone off. And more so in interacting with the other individuals around him, who were some on the interview as well. I mean, these are the kind of people that you should be very happy are protecting your country. I mean, they are serious, they are smart, they are dedicated, they know the levers of how to do the work that they do. I was impressed. I mean, just as an example, when I was in college, I was in Navy ROTC, Naval Reserve Officer Training Corps, which is sort of they'll pay for your college, and then you owe them several years of work, or you need to go into the military for several years. I dropped out after 2 years because I just couldn't handle people telling me what to do. That's just my nature. I didn't mind that what they were saying is just like, that's stupid, I'm not going to do it. But I did spend a month away at sea in the Mediterranean, living and working with the enlisted people, and I walked away from that impressed with what the military can do. Not just the American military, but I think many militaries. It can take relatively unstructured individuals, give them purpose, teach them, and make them work in unison towards a goal in a way that I haven't seen in any company that I've ever worked with. So, and that was on really full display with the individuals who were around Jake. So, given who I saw and what they were doing and what they were talking about, and how they were carrying it out, that to me just gave me comfort that, okay, well, I don't see a reason why all these individuals would be acting a, a play for the sake of somebody who's sitting over in the corner taking notes. And that was
Mhm.
essentially what my role was, to sit in the corner taking notes. Um, so that was, yeah, that was interesting.
I can see Jake's confirmed in the last day that the full interview is 2.5 hours long, and that's going to be released in full on News Nation as well. So that 40-minute interview that was, and I think I tried to remind some folks of this, and it's just my opinion, but it's made for a broader audience. It was, for me, it was 3 or 4 interviews almost cut into one, where you had the story, you had the psionics aspect of it, you had the biological effects, and then it kind of brought things together at the end. Maybe for generations that have shorter attention spans, maybe for folks
Mhm.
newer to the topic. It was punchy, it filled a lot in. For some, clearly too much. For others, it was enough. Others were
Mhm.
left wanting more. And then you had the aspect of the video being part of it. I don't think it was personally put across properly, and I think I saw you comment this on X as well, that the separation between Jake's story and the video were two separate things.
Yeah,
As much as they were very similar, it was very easy to not realize that the video wasn't what Jake was talking about.
exactly. Yeah, unfortunately. And even if I think News Nation had done a better job of separating it, it still would have been linked.
Yeah.
So and that's not Jake's fault, but
No.
you know, well, anyway, that's what I have to say about it. I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
No, that's okay. If we're entering this potential age of the whistleblower that perhaps started with David Grush coming forward, we waited with bated breath for more to come forward as we heard about 40 people in the background. They weren't all standing in a room waiting for the door to open. It was conversations happening behind closed doors, interviews going on. 2024 sort of passed by without many more coming forward. You could argue Jason Sands was a name. I know that's a story that's been controversial for many. We now have Jake Barber, and it appears other names ready to come forward. How do you feel? Do you feel this is a new phase of whatever the process is for this to go forward? It seems we had the New York Times story, TTSA, whatever was happening there. Other folks came out and got involved in. Are we now at a phase we are going to see people like Jake and his cohorts coming out and speaking?
Well, I mean, his the fact that his cohort are all admitting. So it's not just Jake. Jake's just the tip of the spear.
Mm,
He has 3 other people on that video admitting that what it is that he's doing who worked with him is real. And then you have Blitch, who has even, you know, higher credibility in terms of, his governmental associations. Uh, and you can just go read the list of them, which is extraordinary. So basically, you have like 4, if you want to call them that, whistleblowers all coming out at once, right? So I think the biggest pushback, which I can agree with, is okay, these are still just stories. They still fall in the realm of anecdote, although they are the people that, again, protect this nation and have every reason to not come forward with this information because it will hurt their career, or disrupt their family lives. So you have that. But I think what's new about this group that is important for everybody to realize is this is not just people coming forward, it's people bringing their expertise in what they claimed they were doing and trying to enact it in a public way to address the many times comments that you see in threads of, well, I'm not going to be happy until an alien comes and shakes my hand.
mm,
That there's this instinctive, um, again, back to the visual. I need to see, not just hear. Now, I have 2 responses to that. One, at one level, I agree. Two, I think if you don't like something, don't be such a Debbie Downer and state the obvious, which is, yeah, we want evidence. I mean, That's not a brilliant statement for anybody to make, right? That's just sort of obvious and me too. Um, if you want to make a comment like that and it's not followed up with how can I help or what can I do to, then you're just an armchair critic sitting in your basement, as far as I'm concerned. So I tend to just delete and or block those people. Literally, I just go block because it's not a helpful thing. I mean, in my group meetings around the science that we do, it very quickly becomes apparent who is just a critic because they think it makes them look smart, as opposed to those who can offer a suggestion in the absence of pure critique. I want to hear solutions. And so what you see with Jake and the group around him is people who claim to know how this is done and operationalizing it with private money. And people say, "Oh, it's a grift." Blah blah blah. I mean, again, put any of that in one of my threads, instant block. Just a warning. Because if it's not going to be done with public money, in other words, nobody's going to put together a GoFundMe. And if you want to know the amount of monies that are being expended on this, I won't say it, but you'd be shocked. That represents probably 1/10 or 1/100th of what the operation looks like when it's done truly by the military. Right. And while none of these individuals revealed to me anything that I shouldn't know from a TSI, a CI standpoint, I came to realize that what it takes to do this is an extraordinary amount of coordination, and not just coordination, in a totally secret manner, but coordination with various agencies to make sure that all the rules are followed. And that was the other thing that really impressed me was the amount of effort that they took to make sure that nobody was skirting any rules.
And you've started touching on Skywatcher, the group that Jake has come out and mentioned that they want to, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, because it's been a bit of a wild few days, essentially demonstrate they can collect materials of unknown origin on their own privately without the need for government classifications. Is that wrong?
Data.
Okay.
Data. Yeah. I mean, because I think once you start getting into collecting materials, you're talking about, you're either talking one or two things. One, the things land and just turn off and give themselves to you, or some sort of kinetic action against them, which is not, in my opinion, given that you don't know who or what might be in it or who it belongs to and what the reaction might be to doing so, is it wouldn't be a wise thing. And I made it quite clear. I said that I will not be involved in anything that involves a kinetic action. I just don't want to go anywhere near that. And I think that should be a red line that the community uses, unless it's clearly hostile, in which case, all options are open.
So, in terms of that, the funding, it seems, is coming from Alex Clokus, who is
That's not correct.
No, again, that's something that's coming up online quite a
Yeah,
lot.
I mean, he's involved, but he's not the only person.
Let me ask then, and the actual line of questioning, I don't want to get into, who's funding it? I don't particularly care. I'm just like,
And
that's
I don't even know the names, but I
Sure.
know that again, the amounts of money required to do this right, and to have a kind of what you would think of as a VC follow-on, are just they're considerable. They're considerable.
Is this the benefit and the consequence of folks like yourself and Carl Nell attending a SALT conference, it being well received? And
Mhm.
those events aren't there for folks to sit and listen to UFO stories. They're to get people involved who have serious backing, serious, influence, And this is the kind of thing that comes from those types of events that we maybe don't
Right.
hear of for 1-2 years, if we
It
hear
is
of it.
100% correct. That you have people who say, "How can I help?" And you need somebody who's willing to organize it and put it together and structure it again in a legal manner. And it's it, you're going to hear, I think, more from the Skywatcher group, and I don't speak for them in any way, shape, or form. And so, I think many of the concerns will be addressed. But to me, and I've been out there actually pushing this, that we need investment, we need money, and if someone's willing to take or put their money forward and put down risk, uh, then or withstand the risk, then uh, you know they should be allowed to benefit. But I think the objective here, at least as much as I've been involved with Skywatcher, is that uh, one of the objectives will be to make the information public, and public in a way that uh, merits the term disclosure. And so, the moment they sign a secret contract with, name your favorite villain defense contractor,
Yep.
will be the moment that I say I'm done.
Okay.
I mean, it, I don't mind resources coming in, but if it's going to be something where the results get funneled back into what it is that what we would consider the legacy program, without at least admitting that it's real, I'm done.
No, that's fair. Do you mind, just before we go into Sol, something that loads of people got in touch with? You did attend an event that News Nation showed a clip of with the group Skywatcher,
Mhm.
and let's be fair, it's a couple of minutes at most on the show, but what is talked about within it, and please again correct me if I get any of the language wrong, is they are attempting to use psionics or psychic connection to summon a craft. Some folks have, CE5, human initiated contact, whatever protocols people want to call it, but they managed to establish a connection. They then use the language on News Nation that another UAP, UFO shows up. There's a dogfight, is one of the words used, and it seems to bring the craft down. This is the way it's sort of been presented in the narratives coming out. Are you able to clear up what exactly it was we were watching and seeing?
Um, I never saw the dogfight. Actually, that imagery was new to me. They might have taken that separately or found it after,
Okay.
so I never saw that. I saw the picture of the lines look like squiggles
Mm,
in the sky. I still have to follow up with them on that because I never saw it. Um, no, all I saw was an individual who was doing what they said that they were doing, which was trying to contact something.
mhm.
Um, and then when he started talking out loud and going into some form of distress, then something happened, above, and then we saw the pictures and what it was the other individual claimed. Now, if you want to play devil's advocate, you could say that that was all a show. You could say that that was a signal for the other guy to say something. These are all things that went through my mind as I'm sitting there trying to be the neutral observer. And yet, when I literally said, call the medic, because of what I thought was a level of distress that the individual was going through, when the medic guy came in, he said, yeah, he could see the rapid breathing, the heart rate had gone up, etc. So it was pretty good acting if it was acting. And as I said on the News Nation thing, for me, it was correlation, not necessarily causation. Um, and so now, okay, the real underlying question is not whether something necessarily showed up, but it was how it was claimed to be caused or called. I don't have a problem. Let's just think about telepathy for a moment. So we already know that humans have the capability with artificial intelligence to put a net on your head and read your dreams, right? I mean, it's there. I mean, something that 10 years ago people would have laughed you out of the room saying that you could do has been done. Okay, now advance us 10,000 years from now. What might we be capable of doing in the future in terms of either reading thoughts or putting thoughts back into somebody's head? Never mind just reading them. If you can read them, that means you know where they came from, which means you know the kinds of things you would need to do to, let's say, put those ideas or thoughts back into somebody's head. It's advanced. We don't have it right now, but okay, whatever. So somebody I was talking to online said, well, why don't you think about it as a Bluetooth connection?
Mm-hmm.
That this is just an advanced form of mental Bluetooth, and it's not magic. I don't think any of it's magic. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't understand how it's done. I'm just processing the data and then putting it and contextualizing it against the many other reported interactions that people claim to do mentally. I don't know. I mean, I could say, I don't know, but it's fascinating. I don't know how much time I can put into studying it, except seeing if it can be repeated. And that's really what I think Skywatcher and any other groups, and I'm not aware of any others than this that might be set up to accomplish it, is do a repeatable experiment. If they do it 3 times and or 4 times or 5 times and stuff shows up, I think then you have causation. What was interesting was after I had come home from that event, you probably saw in the News Nation thing that there were all of these sightings in the nearby towns. Did you see that?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, correlation, causation. I don't know. I don't know.
Is that the first time you had witnessed that sort of event?
Yes.
Someone summoning a craft, yeah.
Yeah.
I say a craft, someone summoning something.
Something, and then something showing up on video. So there was the thing that the guy saw, which we never caught on video, unfortunately. And because we didn't have 50 sensors pointing at the sky. But the thing that we did catch on video, it not only went one way, but it came back.
Mm-hmm.
And, they did a really good analysis and estimate of the speeds depending upon what the distance might have been. And it didn't matter the distance. It was something that our aircraft can't do. Travel at those speeds. And so it was an object. Showed up on the film pretty fast. I think it's fair to say it wasn't a bug, given the depth of field. And so it's preliminary data.
It's interesting stuff, and I look forward to more coming out quickly. I like the fact a full interview is coming out and that Jake's happy for that to be released at 2.5 hours. I think that may perhaps be one more for the community and the online community to really see more detail, conversation fleshed out in context. It can often be lost when it's punchy TikTok-esque clips being smashed out in news form. And also Skywatcher looks to be releasing more in the immediacy as well, so I'll allow that to happen and again kind of judge that on its own merit. Is Skywatcher something that you're interested in having Jake or others discuss as part of the Sol Foundation? I suppose we can link into discussing the symposium.
Maybe next year. I hadn't really thought about it. I think I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe get them to come and present their results. I don't know. Um, you know, my problem is that I seem to be associated with so many of these things.
Hmm.
I'm going to have to pull that back on some of them, just because I can't do it. I can't do it all. I just simply can't. Um, so uh, so we'll see. I have to talk about it with the other people at Saul. I hadn't thought of it.
Well, let's get into Sol then. The second symposium was held in San Francisco, November 22nd to 23rd at the Fort Mason Center, a bigger venue than the original conference. I think that was always a hope. But I remember you mentioning at the time, can we get somewhere
Mhm,
a little
mhm,
bigger and more accommodating for that
mhm,
kind of audience? One of the listener call-in shows, one of the gents on there helped out in organising the event as well, and he said it was fascinating to be behind the scenes of, and the production values are there. And I think people are starting to see that in the very early drops that are coming out now for some of the early access videos. Can you just briefly, Gary, give an overview to some of the audience who may be unfamiliar with
mhm.
Sol and what its goals are as to what it is?
Well, Saul's principal role is to, or goal is to provide a field of discussion within which people from a variety of academic, religious, political, meaning policy, can come and talk about how the concept of UAP and the concept of non-human intelligence impacts humanity, right? Whether they're real or not is is actually irrelevant because everybody's talking about it. And
Hmm.
as we all know, perception is reality. And so, people are talking about it. So maybe it's a giant filet de deux. What's it called? Yeah, folly of two, where everybody's in a big circular conversation, only repeating things that they've already heard. Or maybe it's real. And if it is real, what does it mean? So there are established ways, in academics at least, that we talk about controversial subject matters. And there are rules and professional approaches. And so, surprisingly, it needed an organization like Sol to come together to at least unify and determine what those positions might be. Now, that doesn't mean that there haven't been like a dozen other institutions before: MUFON, Scientific Coalition for UAP Research, UAPDX, or UAPX, UAPDF. They're all extremely important, and some of them predated us. We're just taking it from a much more academic point of view. Um, so, I mean, policy work. For instance, we've been asked to talk to two of the major state legislatures now to help them craft policies about how it is that they might deal with something as simple as the drones and weeding out and helping them figure out which are just simply drones and what might be something a little bit more exotic.
Hmm.
Because that's the first thing you have to do. You have to get rid of the banal
Hmm.
than the prosaic. I mean, drones around nuclear power plants is not necessarily banal and prosaic, but it's not our soul's interest. Once we've
Hmm.
defined it as such, then it goes into somebody else's um, uh, in basket. So that policy effort, I think, is important because people do look to academics, for better or worse, for the kinds of white paper policies that they can use to say, okay, somebody's thought this through. For those for those who work with ChatGPT now, for instance, a lot is it's pretty darn good at coming up with the list and order of all the things you need to deal with. So we're there to provide that kind of service, but around UAP. Jonathan Berta has a project that he's involved with to use large language models and AI to literally scrape all information that we can about it so that we can basically provide an AI chatbot that can answer the public's questions as well as those for policymakers to give them real data. And we've been coordinating with, and we actually instituted a meeting about 3 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago now, of all of the major, the cottage industry that's been set up, a council to cross coordinate with each other to stop, any duplicative effort and kind of coordinate so that there's a one landing page place or set of places where the media will learn to come to, or policymakers will learn to come to, so that they can get real data and not the BS from the guerrilla skeptics of Wiki that have destroyed information. The anti-science group, the guerrillas. I mean, it's purely anti-science. It's so Luddite as to be, sad is the best way to put it. So, we ran the first of the meetings at Stanford, and based on money that had been given to me exactly to do that and approved by Stanford to do so, right the way up to the level of the deans. And we have, once we got our charitable designation from the US government as a 501c3, we've been directing all the donations, or the majority of the donations now, directly to Sol, so I don't have to, work with Stanford as the intermediary. And that started as of last summer, just to avoid complications. And so the new meeting, the one up at Fort Mason, was paid for entirely by either donations given directly to Sol, or by the attendance costs, or by high-level donors who wanted to pay extra to meet the principles. And people again had these concerns about grift, and it's like, we didn't make any money. You should be thankful that there were people who were willing to put down the kind of money that they did as donations, or to have a dinner, so that the rest of the people could have a good time. And I think people need to look to the best qualities of what was trying to be done, rather than look for some reason to be envious. But I think, that said, the meeting was extraordinary. I mean, people came to us on a regular basis, said, this has been wonderful. I made so many, and it reflected what actually happened at the first meeting, is that I'm so happy to know that there are so many serious people and other professionals that are just like me. And we decided, especially this time, to open up the meeting a little bit more to the experiencers, and we brought Karen Austin from the John Mack Institute to give a talk on experiencers and give her personal experiences. So that was good, because that actually comports with one of Peter Skafish's interests in experiencers. And so, what you're seeing is us at Sol establishing ourselves in nuts and bolts and the issues around the military, stepping out a bit further into the academic realm to cover sociology, anthropology, religion, right? And now going a bit further in the experiential and, let's say, psychology of claimed interactions. And again, it's just about getting it into the appropriate silos and giving a professional polish to how it is that it's all talked about. So I'm delighted at how much we've succeeded so far. And if anything, I am I'm sort of overwhelmed and frightened by the amount of positive reach out that we've had. It's just simply beyond my ability to, as one individual, deal with it. Um, and so that's the next step is, okay, how do you create um, a volunteer network? How are the volunteers organized? How are they vetted? What are the policies that you do? So all of that is, and is, again, it's not just us. It's because we can now coordinate and beginning to coordinate with all the other groups. We can look for ways to, harness the energy of the system. And so I would say to anybody who wants to say, well, I'm not happy because I didn't get X, is, you know what? Why don't you volunteer? There's probably a place we can put you. Harness
Absolutely.
that anger. And actually, it's interesting that I say that I when I was a graduate student or a postdoc and an experiment didn't work, I didn't get the results that I thought, or something. I felt that I got mad at the experiment, not at myself, and I harnessed that energy to make it work. It's like when I do software programming. I get a bug and it really annoys me, and I try to track the bug down because you get the hit of dopamine when it worked.
Yeah.
And so it's, searching for that dopamine hit. So I would just suggest to the community is find a way to harness your frustration towards some kind of positive goal, and don't think that the positive goal needs to be the end of the rainbow. That there's a lot of steps between here and there that need to be enacted uh, to accomplish it.
Yeah, that's good advice. I know we're marching towards the end of the time we've got, but how do you feel a third, and I'm presuming there's going to be a third annual Sol Symposium later this year. Is that on the card still?
As long as we can get the right kind of donations. I mean, I don't think we can do anything much bigger than what we did. I mean, the Fort Mason was a lot of effort. Um,
Would you consider
so-
bringing that international, like perhaps to the
oh
UK?
yeah, there's discussions of doing it in Europe. Yeah. At the very least on the East Coast this time, as opposed to the West Coast, which is about as far away for everybody as it can get,
Mm.
uh, apart from our Australian friends. But yeah, no, there's definitely been discussion about doing it in Europe.
And what kind of timescale are we looking at for the release of the videos to the wider public? Do we know that yet?
Well, I mean, you've already seen a couple of them come out. They're being worked on by one or two individuals. Again, we're indebted to the volunteerism because the the quote to do it professionally was like, okay, we don't have the money for that. So all the intros have been done and approved. The little kind of soul at the beginning and then
Yeah.
soul at the end, and all the accoutrements that you expect out of a well-produced thing. That Peter and I are absolute in our demands that it look proper. So that's been done, and there's they're going to come out in groups now. I think we had like Beatrice, hers came out, and then probably a
Yes.
couple more. We'll have. I think one of the next ones will be well, because Jacques wasn't able to partake because he was sick, he had a cold. Um, he's agreed to do a sit down of some kind, and we'll do like a fireside with him at a different point in time. But then they'll come out, you know, in groups probably of three or four, and then I would hope that they're all done in the next month. It's not like we're going to tease them out one at a time.
Yeah.
We want them out, but we're limited by the volunteer and their ability to do it and still put food on the table at their home.
Well, the link's in the description, folks. If you feel you've got any of those expertise, and plenty of you reach out to offer to help me with stuff that I'm trying to expand my own toolkit this year with, like, video production and things, please reach out to Saul and offer those kind of services. And I know a lot of you want to get involved, and it sounds like that would be very much appreciated on the other end. Gary, I've got a ton of questions, and I'm going to have to only probably ask you a couple of them here from listeners.
Mhm.
I'm going to steal one from myself, though. Just
Mhm.
on this kind of year ahead, something that's being mooted and has been for some time now. This isn't a new idea, but it's sort of back in the on the tongues of people. Is this idea of timescales and people talking about something big's coming in 2027 or
Oh, I think that's all
2029?
rubbish.
I
I
was
think it's
going to ask,
rubbish.
how do you
I
view
I
that?
I have I you know, if I wanted to psyop and make people look ridiculous, it would be that kind of cult-like, prediction of
Yeah,
something coming at, the on some date, and how many of those dates have come and gone where
all of
nothing happened.
them.
Exactly. Literally every one of them. So if you want to use, this is where I would use Occam's razor, where I'm always railing about Occam's razor. You can cut yourself with it by just assuming that the simplest idea is the best. I prefer the Bayesian prior approach that gives a probability. The probability that that's rubbish is very high.
Mm. And
You know,
I would go with you on that. I struggle myself with predictions and
yeah.
timescales, and
I mean, it's nice, but it's incendiary and meant to be clickbait. It's when something looks like it is purposefully designed to draw you in and get you to be worried about something, you should worry, not about the event, but you should worry about who and the why of it. I mean, and people would come back to me and say, "Gary, but isn't that exactly what is going on with the whole military idea and the threat narrative?" Yes, it is, but it was designed to get people to pay attention, not to, because it was real,
Mhm.
not to distract you from something more credible. Now, look, it's out in the zeitgeist now. It's there in the back of the mind. If the if some evidence shows up a year from now that there's something more credible to it, well, it's data ready for follow up.
Well, let's finish with some listener questions, Gary, and I'm going to pick two or three here of about 80, I think I got just in the last day or two. Thank you to everyone who sent them over. Rob asks, do you ever think the push to expose the phenomenon is potentially dangerous, like a Pandora's box for humanity?
Um, well, I think there's two ways to think about it. One is, is it a Pandora's box for the government? Yes, because if any of the claims are true, if many of the claims are true, then there's people who need to be worried about the consequences of the exposure of whatever their actions might be. Now, I'm on record as saying that, irrespective almost of the extent of whatever it is that might be wrong that people have done, there needs to be some kind of blanket amnesty. And I'm sorry to say that. You need to start with a blanket amnesty and make a few exclusions of things that are just so far off the reservation as to be inappropriate or criminal. And that's not for me to decide. But I think until you do so, you're going to have people who might have information cowering in fear. So there's that, and then we also know that there is no there's no partial disclosure from the government. The government has found a way to say UAP are real, but in the almost same breath, they say, but they're not aliens. We have no evidence that they're aliens.
Mm,
Well, there's plenty of lawyerly ways to get around what it is that just said.
yes.
Okay, well, there might not be extraterrestrials, but maybe there's something else. and run the gamut of everything from how put us ultra-terrestrials to interdimensionals, et cetera, or something else that's already been here, or it's been here for a long time. And so it's so there's that, because once you admit that there is an entity here, not just a phenomenon,
Mm-hmm.
then all the other questions become relevant. What's the agenda? Why have you lied, et cetera? And so there's that Pandora's box. The other Pandora's box is that you're talking about is okay. Well, what happens if technology disruption occurs? That disclosure leads to access to technologies that the angry monkeys shouldn't have right now. And so that's a whole line of thinking that one needs to war game out. I mean, this is again something that I think that Saul should do. Is what are the scenarios and what are reasonable chains of thought of consequences from each of these scenarios?
Mm-hmm.
And again, to provide it as let's say a Rand Corporation like analysis, and so there's that one. And then there's what happens if we kick off some kind of negative interaction with whatever this might be? I think as Chris Mellon, I think, has said something to this effect. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry, Chris, if I'm ascribing something to you that you never said, but at least it's been out there that, well, admission that they're real might bring their, attention in some unwarranted manner. Okay, well, fine. That's fine to say. So the appropriate response from a policy standpoint is, how would we protect ourselves against that? And what would be the mode of interaction with whatever such a thing might be? And I would just remind everybody again and again that the word alien, while it's used for immigrants or it's used in Hollywood, etc., probably the best Hollywood example of a thinking process that might be alien was Arrival, the movie, right? Where something is so unlike humans in its thought processes as to be not understandable, right? That we dare not anthropomorphize, is that the right way of saying it? The intent of something that makes very different assumptions about ethics and morals, if it even has such. So, so those are things I think that at least Saul or other groups should be dedicated to getting out there into the scientific literature or into the psychosocial literature, and into the policy literature, because there's a lot of good thinking and a lot of good thinkers out there who could do so. And so to me, that's just that would be the way to harness your either fear or frustration, is to start putting out your own thoughts, even if they sound crazy or even if you think they sound, or even if they are amateurish. It's you have to start with an amateurish approach, even me, before I learn what I don't know. And then say, okay, well, if I don't know this, who do I go to find out more information?
That is all for this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to leave the podcast a review on your chosen platform. Apple and Spotify do make a huge difference to the algorithm. If you're checking the show out on YouTube, please don't forget to like and leave a comment on here as well. Any sharing you do is very much appreciated on any social media platform. And finally, you can listen to shows ad-free and sponsor-free in their glorious full versions by subscribing for less than the price of a coffee on Apple, Spotify, just search That UFO Podcast Premium. YouTube, you can sign up and be a member, or you can do that through patreon.com. Thank you very much for listening, folks.
It wasn't a tic-tac and not quite a saucer, more like a hubcap designed by Chaucer, a little baroque and quite steampunk, like Alice was playing bass for the Parliament of Folk. The little fucker hovered right outside of my window, and when I shoved out the screen, he made it an issue. I don't think he expected me to see his ass, but I'd had some champagne and smoked a little grass.